know, it took me a long time to find my voice. It really did, and part of that is because I like to do a lot of different things. And when I started out with the mystery, I sort of, when I first started out, I wanted to be a mystery writer. That was all I wanted to do. And then I sort of got this idea, well, I was taken up, I think. One of the reasons I speak so passionately about this is I think I was caught up in the idea that mysteries couldn't be literature. And I knew that I had the capability to write literature, or I felt that I had the capability to write literature. And so I started out writing mysteries as kind of an entertainment, you know, what Graham Greene called an entertainment. And I didn't want to put my name on them, and I was contracted to write small press books elsewhere that were, you know, deep and artistic. And so Keith Peterson was a result of that. And he did quite well. He won. He was nominated for 2 Edgars, and he won 1.
Yeah.
And
For the Rain, if
for
I
the
recall
Rain,
right.
right. And what happened to me was I've always tried to be very honest with myself as I go forward. And what happened to me is I realized that if I had the books of Andrew Klavan at that time and the books of Keith Peterson on a shelf, and I had to choose which one to read, I'd probably want to read Keith Peterson. And the only question that I began to ask myself was, could I put what I felt was the depth of the one book into the other and maintain its speed and its entertainment value? And that's been the story of my career, trying to do that. And it's not for me to say how successful I've been at it, but it has been the effort to take this form, not to use this form for literary purposes, but to write this form so well that it becomes literature. And so it took a long time for me to bring those things together. And that's where Keith Peterson comes in.
Well, you've not only done well with films, which is one way to measure keeping score, but you've been nominated for 4 Edgar Allan Poe Awards, which is the Oscar of the mystery world.
Yes.
And I believe you've won 2, am I right?
Won 2.
You won for The Rain, the Keith Peterson, but then you won for who's Margaret Tracy?
Margaret Tracy, well, Margaret Tracy was before any of this, early on. I had published 1 novel, and it had died a terrible death. And I was broke as it's possible to be. And my wife was pregnant, which is a very inspiring fact. And I read a lot of thrillers, read a lot of mysteries, and I thought, you know, I could just churn one of these out. And so I wrote the plot for this book about a woman married to a serial killer. It later showed up, I don't doubt it was stolen, but it was in a movie called The Stepfather, which has almost the same plot, which is by, I think, it's by Donald Westlake, I think, and Joe Gores, if I've got that right. Anyway, I came up with this plot, and then I thought, well, if I'm going to write this really fast, I need some help. And I called my brother Lawrence, and he came up to my cottage where I was living, and we sat with dueling typewriters, and we battered out the first half of this book in 3 days. And of course, by the end of it, we were weeping with laughter, the 2 of us, and we were joking back and forth. It was going to win an Edgar, and it was going to be made into a movie, you know, because we thought it was just trash, you know. And we sold it for just enough money to get me through some very hard times. The book came out and died, won an Edgar, and was made into a film, one of the worst films ever made, called White of the Eye. The book was called Mrs. White, and the film was called White of the Eye.
Mrs. White by Margaret Tracy. I've never read it.
It's actually quite entertaining. It's unpretentious, I will say that for it.
And what did it win an Edgar for?
It won an Edgar
Best
for Best
Paperback Original?
Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, it was wonderful when they called out the name Margaret Tracy, and my brother and I, as 2 big fellows with big beards, stood up and...
Well, it was the unmasking is oftentimes, heck, it's mystery, right? You should be a pseudonym. Okay, well, as Keith Peterson, I know you wrote The Rain, The Trapdoor, There Fell a Shadow. What was The Scarred Man? Were there more than 3?
No, that was the transition book. The Scarred Man was the book where I said, you know what? What happened was I read the book, The Woman in White. Wonderful, wonderful.
Wilkie Collins.
Wilkie Collins.
Great book.
And I thought, this is literature. You know, this is a wonderful book, and if this can be done in the British form, which is much slower and bigger, it can be done in the American form, which is faster. And I started to work on bringing these 2 characters of myself together. And The Scarred Man was written either as Keith Peterson writing as Andrew Klavan, or as Andrew Klavan writing as Keith Peterson. I guess it was that.
Okay, well that explains why I could never figure that out. All right, now is Andrew Klavan, just so I think I've got this right, The Face of the Earth?
That was my first novel. Yeah.
Okay, then you wrote Don't Say a Word, which we've already talked about, or somewhere in there. You've also written Animal Hour, Corruption. We mentioned True Crime in 1995. The Uncanny, which is a ghost story.
Yeah, it's a ghost story thriller. Yeah.
Looked kind of like fun. Hunting Down Amanda, which I remember, was an interesting thriller. Had a lot of cool elements in it. My staff were extremely fond of it. You also wrote Man and Wife and now Dynamite Road, but you wrote 2 books for permanent press, I think. Darling Clementine and Son of Man. And Darling Clementine is about a poet, Samantha?
Yeah. Darling Clementine is an erotic, it's a novel, an erotic philosophical novel. And these were the books, Darling Clementine, Son of Man, were the books I was writing while I was Keith Peterson. So this was the kind of division in my character before I brought these 2 things together. And so that's where they fit in. And they're still in print and still can be gotten from permanent press. And
Marty Shepard's still out there selling your books. I love that. Yeah, yes, he's a brisk. So some of them are listed actually under sci-fi fantasy, which I find interesting. I was looking on the internet trying to figure out what to say.
Yeah.
And I observed that some, particularly The Uncanny, and Son of Man, which is really a novel of Jesus.
Yeah, that's a religious novel.
A religious novel, yes. Did you talk to Mel Gibson? Is he making his movie without you?
I was before Mel Gibson, but after Luke, I think. And I think actually Luke did it better. So.
Anyway, I only mention this for those of our viewers who might go out and try to figure out your bibliography, that they're going to find multiple names and multiple listings.
And you've missed a couple that I won't even tell you about.
I'm not surprised. Well, tell me quickly.
There was a science fiction novel I wrote under the name L.T. Stewart.
L.T. Stewart.
Which was also to get me through the tough times. You know.
Okay. Why is there not an Andrew Klavan website per se, or is there one and I can't find it?
No, there is. It's www.andrewklavan.com, and what I can't get it to do is quite a nice website. It was beautifully designed, what I can't get it to do yet is come up on a Google search.
You're absolutely right, because I tried that today.
And I've been scolding him about this and nagging him, and hopefully I'll get there.
Well, to me, because I could have typed andrewklavan.com, and I will go and put a link on poisonpen.com to andrewklavan.com,
that would be great.
Which will help a lot, but it did confuse me. Andrew, we've run out of time, but I want to say it's been great.
It's been terrific. It's always wonderful to see you anyway.
Well, thank you. Last time we just fell over each other to our mutual surprise in New York, didn't we? In the blizzard.
In another, that's right, in a blizzard and another mystery
And we were
bookstore.
so out of context, I couldn't remember for the life of me who you were.
You know, we had one of those wonderful moments where we stopped and kind of looked at each other and then kind of
It was a New York moment.
It was a New York moment. There it was.
And now we've had our Scottsdale moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I certainly thank all of you for coming and joining us today on the Criminal Calendar.